Morning. I was about ready to come through stereo twice. Great morning, wasn't it? Great weekend. We've got quite a bit of cool weather out there. Good to have y'all here in the house of the Lord where we can worship together. We're going to pick up in our book, in our study, in the book of Nehemiah. We'll pick up in chapter 2, starting in verse 11. Chapter 2, verse 11 of the book of Nehemiah. So, as you turn there. So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. And I arose in the night, I and a few men with me. I did not tell anyone what my God was putting into my mind to do for Jerusalem. And there was no animal with me except the animal on which I was riding. So I went out at night by the valley gate in the direction of Dragon's Gate, on the way to the refuse gate, inspecting the wall of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and its gates, which were consumed by fire. And then I passed on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, and there was no place for my mount to pass. So I went up at night by the ravine and inspected the wall. And I entered the valley gate again and returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done, nor had I as yet told the Jews and the priests and the nobles and the officials, or the rest who did the work. And when I said to them, you see the bad situation we are in, that Jerusalem is desolate and its gates are burned by fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach. And then I told them how the hand of God had been favorable to me, and also about the king's word which he spoke to me. And then they said, let us arise and build. So they put their hands to the good work. And when Sanballat the Hornite and Tobiah the Amorite and the officials and Geshem the Arab heard, they mocked us and despised us, saying, what is this thing you are doing? Are you rebelling against the king? And so I answered them, saying to them, the God of heaven will give us success, therefore. We, his servants, will arise and build. But you will have no portion, no right, or no memorial in Jerusalem. All right. Whoa. Off I said I should come with sound effects and subtitles, but that'd be a little bit much, wouldn't it? We pick up here in second chapter of Nehemiah. And if we go back and look, last week we looked at how Nehemiah had to convince the most powerful man who lives in the known world, a man by the name of Artaxerxes, to reverse himself, to allow something to happen that he has ordered stopped and destroyed. And that might be something easy for us to do, but for a Medo-Persian king, he can't just simply reverse a law. They had regulations in place that prevented the king from putting something into place and then changing. And we went to Esther to see how that happened, how when Haman has tricked King Xerxes into allowing the Jews to be hunted and killed, what Xerxes does is issue a paralleling law that says, well, yes, you can kill the Jews, but the Jews have the right to arm themselves and kill anybody that tries to kill them, because he couldn't override the one law. Artaxerxes is kind of caught in the same spot. He's ordered the wall of Jerusalem stopped and destroyed. So in chapter 2, we notice that Nehemiah never uses the word Jerusalem. Never mentions the city by name. He calls it a place beyond the rivers, the family of his homeland, his father's tomb. Everyone knows what he's talking about. But he doesn't mention the name. And Artaxerxes allows the wall to be rebuilt. Not only does he allow the wall to be rebuilt, he provides provisions by which Nehemiah can cut lumber for the gate and for his house. I'm thumping a little loud here. Is it too loud for you guys? Okay, because it's like I'm getting like thunder in the background here. And so he gets permission from the king, and then not only does the king give him permission to travel, he writes letters to where when he runs into these cats that we run into here in this chapter, in this part of the chapter again, they can't do anything to him. And not only does he do that, he sends the king, or he sends with Nehemiah some of the king's bodyguards, to where it's evident that Artaxerxes is behind the endeavor to rebuild the wall. To where there's no question within the mind of those who are around. But that doesn't stop the problem. So the first half of the uphill climb that Nehemiah has is first convincing Artaxerxes to let him go and let him rebuild. He now has the daunting task of convincing people who had rebuilt the wall in Ezra chapter 4, just a few years earlier, and watched it totally destroyed. He has to get to convince those folks that this time the endeavor is of God, and this time the endeavor has the signature of the king, and this time is now the time to rebuild the wall. Notice how he goes about doing it. Chapter 2, verse 11. So I came to Jerusalem, was there for 3 days. After 3 days of travel, I arose in the night, I and a few men with me. And I didn't tell anyone what God was putting into my mind to do for Jerusalem. There was no animal with me except for the animal which I was riding on. So I went out by night by the valley gate in the direction of Dragon's Well, and on the way to the refuse gates, and in inspecting the wall of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and its gates which were consumed by fire. I passed by the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was no place for the mount to pass. So I went up by night by the ravine and inspected the wall. Then I entered the valley gate again and returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done, nor what as of yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officers, or the rest who did the work. What's he do? He takes a handful of men and one mounted animal. Minimal noise. He goes out and inspects at night. Now, why does he go and inspect at night? I mean, it's hard to see. I mean, I don't know. When I was, my last tour in Iraq, I was stationed on every now and then on what we call a coppice, a little outpost in the middle of nowhere. And at night we went into blackout conditions, which means there's no light. And if you've ever been in the middle of nowhere where there are no lights, folks, it's pretty dark. I mean, it's real dark. You know, have you ever heard the phrase, dark as night? There's a reason for that expression to exist. And so he goes to inspect a wall at night, which is difficult to do, but had he gone during the day, being a new individual in town and being the governor of the town, he would have attracted an entourage that would have gone with him. He goes, he makes minimal noise, he takes a handful of people, and he goes out and he begins going around the wall in a systematic way to certain checkpoints, and the text tells you, if you've got a map in the back of your Bible, you can go and see where those places are. And he inspects the wall. Now, why does he do this? Well, first of all, folks, when you go to inspect a wall, there's two ways to handle a project. You can either go and inspect for yourself or try to delegate it to someone else. Nehemiah wants to be directly involved in the rebuild process of this wall, and so he goes and surveys for himself. Why? There's nothing like real-time data on a situation. Right? It'd be like reading something in the newspaper after a major event happened and assume that you've got the best information available, as opposed to watching it unfold real time. So he goes and inspects it. He only takes a handful of people with him and doesn't tell people where he's going. Why? For several reasons. One, he has to convince this folks who have just significantly seen a major defeat that they're going to re-engage the endeavor in which they were defeated in. Secondly, he wants to eliminate we've done this before. Nehemiah, I don't know what you're thinking, you're on crack, because we built the wall and they destroyed it. We had it. And some king issued an order and destroyed the wall. Or, that's going to be an expensive task to rebuild the wall. Or, rebuild the wall? It's dirty. Ugh. Have you seen all that dirt out there? Ugh. It's pesky. I don't want to be involved in rebuilding the wall. We've tried it before. We've seen it before. We've done it before. It's a laborious task. Instead of having all these folks that are coming along with him as he's going about it and going, we need to put the gate here and restore that gate. Well, that gate, we don't like how it hangs. I'd like to put French doors there. Maybe a little sconce and some drapes. No, I'm kidding. Anyhow. So to eliminate having an entourage that will follow with him, that is going to sit and tell him how they did it in the past, or how they did it before, or why that plan won't work, or as to Nehemiah cuts all that out. And he goes alone. Because his whole purpose is to restore the wall. Here's the thing about restoring things, folks. We all have pet projects. We all have pet projects when it comes to the church. Our project is the most important project at times when it comes to things within the church. And that's great. Because everybody is not gifted equally. I'm a big teacher, theologian guy, so that's my pet project. I can dive into that and stay there. Well, Daniel back there in the back, he's big in evangelism. That's his pet project. He's happy. We put him in a room full of heathens and he's got it. Just let him at it. Give him a water pistol and a bottle of water. He'll charge hell. There we go. And we all have our pet projects. And the children of Israel had their pet projects. And everybody in the city wanted their section of the city secured best. Right? It's in your best interest. And to eliminate all that distraction that would come with it, Nehemiah goes at night. And Nehemiah goes alone. Because the important task about the rebuild process for the city of Jerusalem is that the walls and gate have to stand. And the city has to become secure. It has to become stable. Because if the city isn't stable, it doesn't matter how good the walls are in certain sections. If the wall is really good over here, but it's not so good over here, it's easily breached and the city is no longer secure. So Nehemiah is going to do a personal survey of the wall to ensure that when the wall is being rebuilt, it's going to be built to a standard to where Jerusalem is no longer a reproach. And eliminate all the heartache that has come with the folks that have seen the wall itself destroyed. And would like to put fancy new ideas on the side. Tapestries, cool stuff like towers, and, cannons and stuff like that. So Nehemiah eliminates this, and he goes at night. He doesn't tell anybody what he's doing, nor does he tell them what God has laid on his heart yet. So here he appears in a town, and everybody's like going, "Hey man, what's your plan for rebuilding the wall?" "I don't know. I'm going to hang out for a couple of days, and then I'm going to go for a little ride at night." And he doesn't even tell him he goes for a ride at night. He just goes. Now think about this. This is odd behavior. The man is the governor of Judea, riding around with 3 dudes outside a broken down wall. That's like the president going for tacos without his PSD, his security detail. Right? We all saw what happened to Reagan when I was in the 80s? And he had his security detail with him. They just don't do things like that. But he does. Why? To eliminate any type of issue as he goes and thinks and prepares and looks and sees exactly how this wall needs to be built. Well, we think we ought to build this way. No, we're going to do it this way. And the officials did not know where I was or where I had gone. I hadn't told them all. The priests, the Jews, the nobles, the officials, or the rest who do the work. So I'm not going to tell the people who are going to do the work or have done the work. It's kind of a parenthetical statement where he's talking about those who do the work before they've done the work. I haven't told them why we're doing it this way. I hadn't even told them that we're going to do it this way. I've come to survey and look. One of the interesting things when we entered into discussions here with Skyline and my family, one of the things I did was I went to Google Maps and I Google Mapped you. I went and looked all the way around the building and all the way around the neighborhood. And then pulled up data that's easily accessible through the Census Bureau, as in median salaries, breakdown of families, single parents, incomes, racial breakdowns. Why? These are important things to build a plan that helps rebuild a church. That helps the church continue to grow and continue to move in a direction. Why? Well, if you don't know who you're going to target for growth, or where their needs are, or where they live, or where they come from, you're kind of smacking around at the wind now, aren't you? And so before we ever even agreed to anything and came to agreement and you called me to be your pastor, I began looking at the situation of where you're located. You're in a phenomenal location, a phenomenal space, in a huge community. It's a great place to start. It's a great place to grow. All this was done before we even sat down and had a long-term discussion. Why? Because I wanted to see the situation and the status in which the church is in. and where it's located and where it's situated, to where a plan can be developed and devised that can be shared with the people to where there's buy-in. And this is what Nehemiah does. But you don't make a plan instantaneously. Remember, Nehemiah waited 6 months from the time he heard that the wall had been torn down to the time he goes and asks King Artaxerxes. Wait 6 months before he even asked in diligent prayer. People are, you're not waiting 6 months here. Okay, I got it. But notice what he does here. After he goes and views, then he begins to say, look, verse 17, then I said to them, see the bad situation we are in, that Jerusalem is desolate and its gates are burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild. This phrase is going to be repeated 3 times in this text. The first time it's going to be, come, let us build. Then they will say, we will arise and build. And then Nehemiah responds with, and we will arise and build. It's indication of what God's plan is and the purpose behind which they are going to go and seek this. Notice what he says, come and let us rebuild the wall, that Jerusalem may no longer be a reproach. So he tells the people, look, the situation, they need to see the situation. They live there. The problem about living there is they see it daily. So they are aware of how bad the walls are in. But when you live someplace, it's kind of like when you have something like, I had a skunk when I lived in Dallas crawl underneath the house. And then it sprayed the dog. After a few weeks, you kind of grow accustomed. Not really, but work with me here, people. You kind of grow accustomed to the fact that your house still smells kind of like that. And when people come over, they go, whoa, do you have a skunk under your house? Oh no, that was weeks ago. Well, what happened? Well, it's kind of a long story, but it sprayed the cat, it sprayed the dog, then it went under the house. Did it spray you? No. But when I shot it, it sprayed. Yeah, it's a lovely smell. You become accustomed to the smell. But when people come and see you, well, it's fresh in their mind. There's a smell in your house. You get accustomed to seeing things as they always go. And when somebody new comes in, they go, hey, I've got some great ideas. And you'll always have this conflict when new people come into an organization. They see things that have potential. We see things that we have always done. And so Nehemiah comes to them and says, hey, the wall is rebuilt. He's not telling them anything they don't already know. They know. They were there. They watched it. They had a front row seat and popcorn to the wall to being destroyed. Yay! It's like when they rolled the motorcycle off the truck and the mirror onto the concrete. I almost needed a pastor. But who would I call? Anyhow. My child was ruined. No, I'm kidding. They see it. They were there. They went through the experience and understand the hurt more than Nehemiah will of putting their hands to effort and putting their hands to an activity only to watch as outside forces come in and totally level it and burn the effort and burn the gates and destroy what they've built. They've seen it. They lived it. And then this guy comes in and says, hey, we're going to rebuild the wall and it's going to be great. And they're going to look, sit down, Junior. You weren't here for it. We were. And notice what he shifts. Notice how he shifts his argument. Instead of trying to convince them, he goes, look. And then I told them about how the hand of God had been favorable to him. Notice that that's the same kind of phraseology that he uses with Artaxerxes. Let's check back up there. And the king granted me because of the good hand of my God was on me. Back up in verse 8. Let me tell you what the hand of God has done to lead me to this point to where you can see that I am here not just to get you to buy into a building program where Sanballat and Tobiah will come and knock it all down for you after you've done it. Let me tell you how this worked out. I got the man who ordered the wall destroyed to reverse his decision. Not only reversed his decision, but he gave me these letters by making me the governor. And then he gave me these letters, giving me safe passage to here. And then he gave me these letters so we can go over to the king's forest. Not anywhere else, but to the king's choice lumber and pick wood to rebuild the wall and the house I live in and the gates we live in. So this is not just simply me coming into town with a fresh idea and go, woo, let's rebuild the walls, because apparently you people have been doing nothing for years. Let's just get to work, you people. Yes, see the walls rebuild. No, there's an emotional consequence to come with that. And they know that if they rebuild again, remember the history of what goes on. Go back to the first sermon we had on this. The history of their past rebellions was used against them by their enemies to justify the destruction of the wall. They lied to the king, saying, these people, if they build the wall, won't pay taxes and break away and possibly join the Egyptians. And you can't handle that. Oh, absolutely not. Let's destroy the wall. Nehemiah wasn't there for that. He comes into the situation and says, look, this is the good hand of God. The man that gave the order has now given new orders to rebuild. And it wasn't because he gave the new order. It's because the great hand of God was upon Artaxerxes to help Artaxerxes reverse his decision, to allow me to come in, to bring with me the authority not only of God, not only of Artaxerxes, but that as the governor to help rebuild the wall. And I have provisions and funding to make this happen. And I also have letters of safe conduct to keep our harassers away. Does it help? It does for a little bit, but then those guys get kind of bold, and we'll see where that happens here in a little bit. Notice their response. Notice their response to this. So he comes and he tells them, says, let's put our hands together and build for the wall. Notice their response. When they heard this, then they said, let us arise and build. And so they put their hands to the good work. Notice it's, hey, let's go and build. Then they hear about God's good graces upon Nehemiah and how God has directed Nehemiah to them. And now they see that all the good stuff that has lined and clicked into place. And the people say, let us arise and build. Folks, I have no doubt that this is the pulpit that I'm to be in. And I can tell you that because 6 months ago I had no clue as to where I was going to live, work, or have income at all. 6 months ago, I was informed by the United States Army that my services were no longer required. I'm on the front edge of the wave of a bunch of captains leaving the Army, and a lot of them have a deer in a headlight look when they're told. I sent out 60 resumes. I had a handful come back, and I had one that was just every time we sat and talked, and every time we sat and prayed, just kept feeling more and more and more and more right. As things began to click along through June and July, things just clicked along perfectly along. The house that we were looking at just started clicking along. And all these things, just as I sat and looked and we go, oh, this thing's never going to come through. This is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. Just click, 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 click. I've seen the hand of God working in my life, bringing me to this place. 6 months ago, I had no clue where I would be. And full of questions and fears. And here I am. With a place to live. In a beautiful town. Working with beautiful people. I've seen the hand of God lead me here. I see the hand of God in what we do and work here. And I see the hand of God as we come together as a group to say, let us arise and rebuild. Why? And we're doing that. And we're making great gains. And we are in a position and a place in a great location to where we can have a significant growth. But here's the problem. It's not simply growth for the sake of growth. Notice what the phrase is. They put their hands to the good work. In this case, it's the rebuilding of the wall. Well, we're just going to leave it there. I'll get to that in the end. Like a little cliffhanger. Keeps you awake. But when Sanballat, the Hornite, and Tobiah, the Amorite, and the officials, and Gershom, the Arab, heard it, they mocked us and despised us. They said, what is this thing you are doing? Are you rebelling against the king? Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Amorite. Their ancestors were responsible for the letter that went to Artaxerxes that said the Jews are rebuilding the wall without your permission, and if they break away, they will quit paying taxes and they will break away. And these people will be hard to rein back in. And so to get the Jews to fall back into a place of consistency, of complacency, guess what happens? They use their past history against them. Are you rebelling against the king? This is how they end up going into the exile. They're taken over by the Babylonians in 605, but in 586, Nebuchadnezzar's had enough of these rebellious people and about wipes them out. Tears down the wall and burns them to the ground. Tears down the temple, burns it to the ground. Takes a bunch of people into exile. That's what happens when Ezra returns. He takes about 60, Zedekiah takes about 60,000 back. Ezra takes about another 2,000 back. Now Nehemiah returns with a handful of folks. And that's why we did that large chunk of history at the front, because it's so vital to the story. These guys aren't simply asking questions like, is that a red cow? It's a subtle threat, and it's not really that subtle. It's like if a mobster comes up to you and say, you didn't see nothing. You didn't see nothing. Go on, nothing to see here. You just go on. He's not saying there's nothing to see. He's saying if you say something, well, you and Hoffa will have the same zip code, wherever that is. You'll see nothing. What are you doing? You rebelling? You rebelling? Do you ruin a history lesson? I mean, has it been so short that you have forgotten what has happened when we told the king before? It's like an abusive relationship. It's like when you got an abusive relationship, the abuser looks at the crowd and goes, nothing happened here, right? You hit the doorknob, right? 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 He's not asking questions to figure out if they hit the doorknob. He's telling them, you hit the doorknob, and phrase it as a question. They're not asking the question, what are you doing? Whoa, look at, whoa, what are you doing? No, they know what they're doing. They're asking it in a question, but it's an attack. Hey, it's a veiled threat. You're rebuilding the wall? Oh, well, I'm sure the king would love to hear about this. Why? To use the history about you, about the church, about your personal life, is one of the great things that the enemy loves to do to make you complacent. To keep you from putting your hands to the good work. It's something he does. He buffaloes us all. Oh yeah, well, you may be a Christian, but would a Christian, would they behave the way you've been behaving? Well, I guess not. Yeah. He buffaloes us all the time. Why? Because he reminds us of our past. And in so doing, he buffaloes us to keeping from us putting our hand to the good work. We'll have people within that are familiar with the circumstances around Skyline that will say, well, I hear. Right? It's not really that they heard it. They just start making this stuff up, right? Your personal life. Well, I hear that he goes to church, but, you look how he lives throughout the week. Or how he used to live. Or how she used to live. The enemy loves using our history against us to keep us complacent. To keep us in place. Because that's what he loves. He loves Christian people that don't put their hands to the good work, because then he's got a church that does nothing. And he loves that. Because a church that is on fire, that is putting its hands to the good work, terrifies him. And so when we start to do things, we will be reminded of our personal past, of our family's past, of our church's past, of our history, all as part of an attack to get us back into compliance. Listen to what Nehemiah says in response to these individuals. Let's see what he says. Watch this. And so I answered them and said, the God of heaven will give us success. Not I will. Not the people who are sufficiently motivated to take on this great undertaking. I made up a new word there. Not, I have brought with me great engineers and earth-moving vehicles. It is paid for. We're going to be great. God will give us success. Folks, here's the great thing about any building project, any rebuilding project, anything which God has called us to do. If God has called us to do it, it will occur. He will fund it. He will build it. He will make it happen. We simply have to go forth and put the stones together. If He calls for it, He will bring it to be. We have to be active in that. It's like the person standing on top of a roof in a flood and two boats and a helicopter later drowns and wants to blame God. And God says, what do you mean? I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. The God of heaven will give us success. Therefore, we, His servants, will arise and build. Notice that phrase that shows up again. The emphasis upon the determination of rebuilding. But you have no portion, no right, or memorial in Jerusalem. These are legal terminologies. You have no portion. What you used to have over us and the dominion you used to have over these people ceases today. The authority you claimed by which you could take from these people and rob them at will and take from their land and persecute them and rob them and cheat them and steal them and keep them under your thumb stops today. You have no portion. You have no right. And even more, your name will have no memorial here except as a bunch of bad, foolish men who oppose the will of God. It's a pretty condemning statement. You have no right, no portion, no memorial in the work of God except as that which was an obstacle. They put their hands to the good work. What does it mean? There's a lot of things that we can utilize this phrase, good work, for. Folks, we can put our hands to the good work of rebuilding a church. But if we do so with unclean hands and hearts, as we've talked back in chapter 1, when Nehemiah begins to confess his sins and sins of the people, while we may grow numerically, we may not be growing spiritually. Numerical growth does not necessitate spiritual growth. And so the idea that while we put our hands to the good work must first start within our own lives. Must begin within our own hearts and minds. We have to put our hands to the very good work within ourselves first. Not as like Joel Osteen's wife was, because, when you go to church, you don't worship. No, not that way. But as a means of putting to death daily. The phrase is mortification, putting to death daily the deeds of the flesh, so that when I am out and about and in the endeavor of God's work, when I'm doing the good work, I'm doing it with right hands. Here's the thing, folks. The Bible, we get this confused, does not call us to make converts. Converts are easy. Charlemagne made all of Europe convert to Catholicism. It was easy. You are now Catholic, or you are now dead. Converts are easy. We can make converts all day long. I was to tease my evangelism professor. He was from Romania, and he sounded like the Count from Sesame Street. So it was hilarious. I mean, one day he talked to us about the porpoise of the class, and anyhow, that was free. One day I figured I would just yank his chain, because it's just how I am. And so he asked us to develop a plan of evangelism. And so I developed one, and I developed a counter one. And he came to me, and I told my friends, just keep a straight face. Just whatever you do, no matter what I say, maintain a straight face. And he says, what's your plan? So I believe in shotgun evangelism. He goes, well, tell me what shotgun evangelism is. I said, well, it's easy. You and 2 deacons get in the van, and you all spread out in all the church vans. You go to the door. You walk to the door. You ring the doorbell. You rack your shotgun slide. It says, it's time for you to meet Jesus one way or the other. When he came to, and so, but conversion is easy. I mean, we could do that. I mean, not for long. Clean PD might have a problem with that. But we could do that and make conversion. Why? Because when it's convert or die, it's easy to make that decision. But we're not called to make converts. We're called to make disciples. And disciples are infinitely harder to make than converts. Why? Because discipleship is a lifelong process and requires us to continue to have our hands to the good work continually, personally, but also within our families and then within the church. Why? Because if we simply are going for numbers, if numbers are going to be our driving force, we may not necessarily be going for the good work. We need to ensure that the good work is in the process of making disciples. That in the process of making disciples, we then are making good, strong Christian families that are able to build a good, strong Christian church, which then is able to have an influence within the community in which it lives. Because if you simply make converts, we see what happens when the world shifts against Christianity. Just go look in Iraq. Convert or die. And some folks will die. And some folks will convert. Because the strength of their conviction is not as strong because they skip steps along the way. Putting our hands to the good work at rebuilding simply cannot be about numerical growth. It has to be about spiritual depth and growth amongst the individual and the body. Because in so doing, that is how we rebuild strong. You could rebuild, Nehemiah could rebuild a wall 1 inch thick and 6 feet high. It wouldn't stand up. The good, strong work. Let us contemplate and pray about what it takes for us to put our hands to the good work of rebuilding, of building, of strengthening. Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for this opportunity to come before you. We ask that you be with each and every one of us. That as we examine our lives, that we put our lives to the scrutiny of, are we doing the good work? Are we being good leaders in our families and doing the good work there? Are we good leaders and doing the good work in our church? Because that is a necessity and necessitates before rebuild can really occur, before building can occur. We ask you to be with each and every one of us, that as we go about our days, we reflect you in all that we do, that we take light into darkness daily and hope to a hurting and dying world who is in so much desperate need of you. We ask for all these things in your name we pray. Amen. There may be some folks here today who have contemplated joining and have put it off or said, I'll wait. Today's an excellent day for us to come together and for you to join our body, become a member of Skyline Baptist, and put your hands to the good work here. Maybe some of you here today that says, I have no clue of the security that comes from the God in which he's talking about, in which I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the life in which I lead is securely within his hands, and I can look at every situation and see the ordered steps of my God and trust in that and be able to put my hands to that good work. If you're here today, I invite you to come forward and have a conversation about either about joining the church and being members, or if you would like to talk about where your final and life-changing experience can meet with Jesus here at the cross, I ask for you to come forward. Actually, it's time.
Apologize for the confusion. We're going to sing hymn number 324, Have You Been to Calvary? You've been to the cross where the Lord Jesus suffered. Have you been to Calvary? Have you been to the place of redemption for sinners? Have you been to Calvary? It was there on Calvary, God's dear Son laid down His life for you. While there's time, don't delay. Place your faith in Christ Jesus. Turn your eyes now to Calvary. All right.
Have a good Sunday afternoon.
We'll see you this evening.